as the series shifts to Florida for Thursday's Game 3, we head to Calgary to bring in Craig Button. Craig, Vegas is beating Florida in virtually every aspect of the game right now. What have they done that the Canes, Leafs, and Bruins could not do to have the Panthers in such a bad, dire strait right now?
Well, the first thing is how they're built. They have 4 lines. They have 4 lines that can roll on you, and you never get a chance to take a deep breath, a moment of relaxation, because the next line and the next line and the next line, and it just continues throughout the game. There's 6 defensemen when they're in the lineup, Gino, all in the lineup together. They're the best defensive team in the league when it comes to metrics and everything that goes with it. And the goaltending revolving door had nothing to do with performance. It had to do with injury. Logan Thompson was good in the net. Laurent Brossoit was good in the net. Now we're seeing Aiden Hill good in the net. So this is a team that's coached by a maestro in Bruce Cassidy. We saw how well he did in Boston. So what I would say to the question is, Boston was beat up coming into their series, and despite getting up 3-1, they couldn't sustain it. The Florida Panthers pushed the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Carolina Hurricanes around. They're not pushing around the Vegas Golden Knights. They can't even get a footing in on there. You heard Jonathan Marchessault talk about the fact that we're disciplined. So here's Florida thinking, oh, okay, we're going to try to replicate the same formula we had against Carolina and Toronto. Well, it's not the same team they're playing. What I would suggest is that the Florida Panthers are doing what Dallas did to a certain extent, what Toronto did against Florida. They haven't recognized who they're playing against. This is a different team than they played against in the past. And the Florida Panthers are getting a real comeuppance. And quite frankly, right now, I don't see what's going to change when they go back to Florida. Vegas still has 4 lines. Yeah. They still have those 6 defensemen. They still have good goaltending. They can beat you in multiple ways. Nothing's changing because you go back to Florida.
Yeah, you mentioned Jonathan Marchessault. I want to follow up on him. He's got a dozen goals in the last dozen games. Is he now the clear front runner for the Conn Smythe?
I don't think clear, but I think there's 3 names that should be on the ballot for the Conn Smythe. And Jonathan Marchessault would be at the top of the list, Gino. Jack Eichel in his first playoff in his career has been fantastic. And Aiden Hill, since entering the playoffs versus the Edmonton Oilers, has been fantastic. But when you start to consider what Marchessault has done, you know, when needed, when necessary, when called upon, all the things when we talk about who's going to deliver when it matters, who's going to deliver in the crunch. Well, Jonathan Marchessault has done that. It doesn't mean that Jack Eichel hasn't done it or Aiden Hill hasn't done it. And that's why I have him at the top of the list. But it's not to me, it's not a clear favorite. There never really is a clear favorite, because when a team wins the Stanley Cup, they have so many players that have played so well and some that have stood out, like Eichel and Aiden Hill.
Yeah. And how about this tweet from the Knights' social media account after last night's game? From the Florida Panthers, the Vegas Golden Knights select Jonathan Marchessault. Talk about pouring salt in the wound. Marchessault is also pouring the goals in. Since Game 3 against the Oilers, unstoppable. But as hot as he's been, Marchessault is still a goal behind Leon Draisaitl, who finished playing 3 weeks ago. And how about Jack Eichel? It looked like his series was in jeopardy after he took that hit from Tkachuk last night, but he came back with a beauty assist in the third, and now 22 points in his first playoff run.